Hello, hello. We have Margaret. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. I can't stay long.
Okay, that's fine. I don't think it should be too long. Anyways,
It's kind of exciting that you guys are doing this.
I know I'm excited
I'm
too.
not in the mu music industry, but it's great that you guys are creating a forum or at least a
I'm
space for it.
trying to, you know, just doing my part, throwing it out into the universe to create change.
That's awesome. Be the change wherever you're at.
And then we
Hi,
have,
Ayesha.
E-
Hey Margaret, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Hello.
we
Who else
have
do we have?
Afia. Hey, how's it going?
Uh,
It's going well. How are you?
Good, good, good. And then we have Sophia. How's it going?
Hi, I'm
Hey,
good.
hi,
I'm sorry.
Sophia.
Hi, I'm sorry I was late. I had a little hard time getting it on my phone, so I ended up just coming to my computer.
it's fine. Can you see everything okay?
Yeah, I love your background. Really cool.
Cool. Well, thank you all for coming today. I think that's everyone. So basically, I'm just trying to create good change for feminism in the music industry, just because I really don't know what it is about femininity that people hate so much, that the media hates so much, and that just continuously debilitates the progress of women in the industry and all femme identifying individuals. So I wanted to thank Aisha for letting me host this event and create this event and go back and forth and just try to come up with something like solid and useful for people. So thank you, Aisha.
Thanks, Gio. Glad to be here. Hi, everybody.
Uh,
Hi.
if you don't know, this is all part of the Horatio Alger Association. One of my scholarships that I got back in 2016 when I was coming from Texas, straight out of high school, moving to New York. They've helped me so much. Just they've been like actually the most consistent thing throughout my whole college experience. So just as a resource, as financial aid, just and just having people to talk to and ask questions to. So I really want to throw that out there. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and go through
When did
the.
you graduate, Gio?
Oh, in 2016.
Nice. Okay. Same year as me. Cool.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, so we were at the same conference in DC, right?
I'm assuming so.
Okay, okay, cool, cool. What's your major? You're in the music business, right?
I'm in the industry, but believe it or not, I actually graduated for international business, so there was
Mm.
no um
Okay.
very interesting. But yeah, I didn't go for music, which I regret sometimes. But
Oh, okay, okay. Wait, but why didn't you go for music? You still do it on the side though, right?
yeah, oh yeah, I have my original music dropping. I'll send you everything for sure.
Okay, okay. You can send it in the chat box so everyone else can see too if you want.
Yay, okay.
Alright. So, so the first case that we're gonna start off with is Britney Spears, just because she's been continuously been the subject of really harsh criticism about her sexuality in the media growing up in the spotlight, and recently, she's been, well, I guess since 2008 really, has been in a conservatorship under the guidance of her not so present father in her life. And so basically, that just means that she has like no control over her finances or her actual person. And usually, these types of situations are reserved for elderly who are rather sick and can't really function on their own, like who need help, like brushing their teeth, things like that, you know. So I really wanted to open the conversation on why do you think, or what are some red flags that have led to this type of situation being so uh, brushed off to the side? Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. I didn't want to talk over anyone.
Yeah, go ahead, Charlotte.
But yeah, I think because I did watch the documentary, like the New York Times series that they had going on.
Right, right.
So just like based off of that, just her upbringing was very interesting compared to how sensationalized she became.
Hmm.
And I think because she's so like she was very her image was very promiscuous. So I think when a woman expresses that through her artistry and just like her entertainment persona, they don't take it seriously because they always chalk it up to, oh, she's a floozy, like she needs more direction. Like, they always want to think that she literally cannot think on her own when she is her own person. So I think autonomy is always it's always such a controversial topic when a woman is deciding to show how free and just willful she is through just her artistry in any way, shape, or form they want to represent it.
Right, and she was in control of a lot of her decisions throughout the process, wasn't she?
Yeah,
That's,
she was,
that,
yeah, like in the
yeah,
documentary, she was very hands-on. Like she was in charge of the what is it, the dancing, just like visual execution
the
on so
creative
many things. Yeah,
direction.
like she was pretty much like her own creative director in a lot of projects that are notable for her career. So it's not as she's an incompetent person, but I think just due to media and how they really skewed her to being, even when she had her child, like they really made her out to be like a terrible mother figure, and she was just like all over the place with like that whole like shaving the head and having like these
Mm.
public mental breakdowns, and it's like
Right.
they were
They were
harassing her,
battering her
like,
so
yeah,
much.
yeah,
They
so it
didn't do that
was
to any of the boy bands in that same era.
right,
Yeah.
exactly,
And I
yeah.
was going to add to what Charlotte is saying too. I think a lot of I think right in general, right, like women have choices in general, and if she chose it to be more like sexual, more promiscuous, I feel like we as humans or as the media shouldn't just all of a sudden ping her as bad. So like that is also a choice women have. If you want to be promiscuous, great, and if you don't, that's okay too, right?
Right. It's part
So
of the human experience. It's not, it shouldn't
yeah,
be
and you're mentioning
demonized.
boy bands. I can think of so many times where Justin Timberlake at that time was half
Mm,
naked with like oil all over his entire body on
mm,
stage. You know what I mean?
right. I'm glad you brought up Justin Timberlake. And
Yeah.
Afia, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think I really like love all the points that everyone's bringing up. And I really like love that we're starting with Brittany because I feel like and not to reduce her to a metaphor, because I feel like that's really dehumanizing. Like I think that happens like a lot with like public figures, they're reduced to metaphor. But in a
Mm,
way, if we were like observe like her situation, like her life story, and especially the phenomenon of the conservatorship, in a
mm,
lot of ways, like women in the entertainment industry and even just women in society are in this kind of like metaphorical conservatorship, like within the male gaze, right? Like a
mm,
lot of ways, like we're captivated, like we're held, like literally held captive within like different restrictions put upon us, different expectations for behavior.
mm,
Even from like an economic standpoint, a lot of our finances are controlled either directly or indirectly by the male gaze and like the male like preference and like male agency. So in a lot of ways, like this isn't really like surprising or like new. It's almost like a perfect summation of like what societal forces really do to female voices and to female power, and just also like bridging someone brought up the point about, oh yeah, like how they would try to always say that she was a bad mother, and it just brings up this like there's like a lot of discussion about like the bimbo archetype like nowadays of like how like the ultra feminine is like so demonized, and there's this like dichotomy between like being a feminine empowered sexually liberated woman and then being a good mother and like being a good like societal figure. And I felt like they really try to make her choose between one of them when she really embodied the whole thing.
mm. That's so true. Charlotte, you're
Yeah,
gonna.
I really love the points that you made in the sense of how like we are all kind of in like we are all chalked up to like that metaphorical sense of conservatorship, because even with this within the male gaze, like you're either already automatically categorized just how you present yourself just off the bat, like first impressions. And I think because Brittany, because even when you see in the documentary, she was trained and groomed eventually to gain this type of persona in a sense. It's still very true to her. Like it's not like anyone was forcing her to be a certain type of person, but the fact that she chose to embrace like her femininity in a way that exuded some sexual references at a young age, I think that gave a lot of like men in the industry permission to sexualize her at that age, which also leads to just like a lot of just, I don't know, just like crude behavior in a sense, where it's just like all these adults are mistreating this woman, you know what I mean,
Manipulating.
even from the beginning. And it's just because they think that they have full, it is male dominated, like a lot of places are still very male dominated, so they think they have the right to say and do what they want and please when a person is deciding to express themselves a certain way.
Hmm. So I'm hoping that this conversation will just just be carried out into the world after we leave here today. That way we can just like share more awareness about these red flags that are popping up consistently. You know what I mean? I hope I was able to do that.
I
Okay.
think it's great that you're thinking of this, and I think it's even great, that it wasn't per se like a super feminist woman doing it, for example. I think it's really great that men are talking about it too.
I mean, I'm trying. Like, I
I
always go to
appreciate
the
that, right?
extreme and just say that men are stupid and don't deserve any rights, but
I appreciate
uh, thank you. Okay, our next topic, or our next person is Megan Thee Stallion. I love her to death. And I just wanted to raise awareness over her lack of voice in her original contracts that she signed with, I believe it was 1501 Entertainment. So if you all remember last year in March, she rallied for the release of her album Sugar despite her label's disapproval. But with the help of Rock Nation and everyone over there, she was able to renegotiate her contracts with her management team to have more transparency about her music sales. And through the court, they decided to invoke a temporary restraining order against that original entertainment company, and she was able to release her album. So, oh, and also she was shot by Tory Lanez not too long ago. That caused a whole bunch of controversy. And in the Grammys, she was able to win a few. Was it one or two this year? I forgot.
I think it was two. And she
Two.
was nominated for the third one and didn't win it.
Right. But I wanted to bring up Megan Thee Stallion just because I was like, sorry, there's a siren. Just because when she was on stage about to cry accepting her Grammy, I was like, oh my gosh, did it really take all that mess just for her to be accepted for her talent? Like, come on now, you have to do better.
I feel like Megan, in a lot of ways, like exemplifies a lot of like intersectionality within like the like black like female experience, like right. Because I feel like she was demonized so much. There was the whole like ramification how she was demonized for femininity and demonized for her like liberated sexual expression. But then there's also this like masculinization of her, where it was like
She's so
because she's
tall.
yeah,
She's
because
the
she's
same height as
tall.
Taylor Swift.
Yeah,
Sorry,
that's
what
actually
was it?
so true. Literally. Yeah, like the tall,
Yeah.
like a tall like woman, like who's not a woman of color is like a beautiful model. A tall woman of color is a manly, and a lot of these critiques
Yeah.
are also transphobic. Like that's also another discussion. But a lot of basically she was like this like manly figure. And I think because or they try to like purport her to be this manly figure and take away from her femininity because of her size and because of like how she like took control of her sexuality. So I feel like that's a lot.
Yeah, I
But I
really
think it was
agree
Charlotte.
upon
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I really agree upon that because I feel like every single time mannish figures are always attached to dark skinned women, especially in the music industry. And a lot of the times it leads to them to not shaming anyone who does it, but it always leads to them having to, get, just reconstructive or, surgery for things that they are shamed for. And they still get criticized for how they look just due to just the stigma behind just being a woman and being dark skinned. But then also the fact going more towards like how she carries herself. People demonize that in the sense of if you're too aggressive with your sexuality, if you're not dainty or soft enough or palpable, they will always consider you to not be feminine, and you're very like a masculine, or you exude more masculine energy and femininity, which I never really understood. But I feel it's because since I feel like they always categorize femininity to be something very weak and fragile, if you don't exhibit that, they will think that you are going against how you're designed to be or how you were meant to be programmed.
Right. There's such a cultural bullying in this world. I feel like I'm still trying to understand where it's coming from.
I feel like it's to oppress. I think it's to oppress and to also just like, put people in their place, but then it's also to make the ones that are so deeply rooted in protecting that toxic masculine narrative to feel protected and feel as if that is the one true thing that keeps society going. I think that it threatens the people that are rooted within the toxic masculine rhetoric.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Oh,
just out of curiosity, what do you all do in the music industry?
Oh, I'm a singer.
right. I met Afia at Caffeine Underground Cafe a couple years ago, right? We were both performing that night, our music. And then Charlotte.
I'm not currently in the music industry, but I have had like multiple internships with magazines, music publishing companies. So that's kind of been like my, I guess, like go-to experience when it comes to the music industry.
Yeah,
Right.
so you've been able to kind of see what I'm a musician too, so I'm a singer too. I feel like Charlotte has the like internal experience. I kind of like one day want to pick your brain on, but
I'm always picking her brain. I
yeah,
ask her all the
I'd
questions.
love to keep this conversation going. Yes.
yeah, I wanted to add to what Afia was saying and what Charlotte was saying too, in the sense, right? I'm Brazilian, so and I'm in a place in America. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Massachusetts. There's a lot of Brazilians here.
All right.
So yeah, I think very often the box we're supposed to fit in, right, or whatever that box is, like where you're a very sexual, and um, I don't know, very much like I can handle my life and be independent and still be a stay-at-home wife somehow and still have kids. Like it's a lot to handle. And I think anytime a person isn't in that cultural box, like what you were saying, Gio, you get a lot of hate from your own people, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so today, my biggest fan base is definitely like women of color and Latin women, but not Brazilian women, for example, because I don't fit their cute little box, right? And that's something I think it's sad that people have to come to that reality and accept it.
Mm-hmm. Because it's like we all know that all humans are very different.
Mhm.
That's part of what makes us beautiful. That's part of the human experience. But somehow we've normalized that sort of bullying when
Yeah.
whenever anyone is outside of that little box.
Yeah.
Even,
Oh,
even, oh, you can go. Yeah, sorry.
no worries. I was gonna say that I feel like femininity is intrinsically such like a beautiful and like liberating and just soft and like soft and then also like loud and just such a complex like entity. But I feel like femininity in like contemporary society, especially contemporary American society, is just like a paradox and like a series of like confounding choices of which L am I going to take? Am I going to be like the pristine, like chaste woman, but then like I'm gonna be called like a prude, and then I'm going to be not really sexualized in a certain way, and then I'm going to set my own trap of like expectations I must fulfill that I'll inevitably break and then be demonized for? Do I choose like the sexually like liberated like path and then be demonized like for that agency and then be called all types of like names about assuming like what I like to do with my body? Like it's just all these different things that no matter what you do, there you always lose, you know?
We're
It's
always
that way.
subject to abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like whatever L you take, just do it fearlessly, which is why I think Megan Thee Stallion has so much following. Like, I feel like she really does not give an F about what people say, and she can't afford that because she's about her bag. Like, she has so many other things on her mind to be worried about than all the BS that is thrown her way, which is why when you brought up the Tory Lanez thing and
Mm.
how people were just like so quick to one, not believe her and think that two, it was her fault, and three, like, oh, because she's so, you know, hanging out with a different guy a week or photographed with a different guy a week, I mean, what do you expect? Like, maybe he was
Right.
jealous, or maybe he was, you know what I mean? And it's like,
They're like they kept focusing on, well, let's hear his side of the
right,
story.
it's
Like
it's
it's
victim shaming,
irrelevant.
which is always tied towards the feminine figure, or, you know, the feminine protagonist in the situation, and it's just disgusting because you can see how
Honestly.
people literally can have a foot in their mouth and say that they love Megan the Stallion, but in the same breath they can say, oh, but I mean, if she behaves like that, what do you expect?
Mhm.
It's really a double standard, and it really hurts the ones that are women themselves that believe that part, that still like try to, I'm not going to say they're all pick me's, but it does bring off pick me behavior to where you're always fighting for the plight of men, when it's like, at the end of the day, women are always going to be more oppressed than
Mhm.
women in society. That's just how the patriarchy has set ourselves up in this, you know, that is how we were positioned.
Yeah.
What do y'all think about when Cardi and Megan came out with the WAP and they were just like going crazy over everyone's kids listening to this music. They're continuing the conversation that they had with Britney
Mm-hmm.
about just like being a terrible role model for all these children.
I think WAP was my anthem. It's beautiful that someone decided to put how I feel out there, like in public.
I love it.
I'll be honest with you though, it was very disheartening for me to hear something so liberating out there. And yes, I know it's stupid, but I hated the whole video of Cardi B hiding her, like literally like covering her kid's ears when the kid came around, like her
Mm,
freaking out and turning off the music. Because
mm,
I think that set a precedent that's saying, hey, sexuality is not for children, nor can we talk about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they grow up in a cage. And
mm,
so, like, women grow up in this cage because anytime we're talking with women, it's like, oh my God, close your ears. We're talking about WAP right now, right? And I feel like, and maybe this is just my experience, but I have three brothers. Anytime they're talking about beautiful women or anything, right, that they like sexuality wise, I felt like our parents are very open to it. I'm like, yo,
mm.
you want to talk about your penis? Great. Like all of a sudden you want to talk about, I don't know, WAP, right? Like, and that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Right. I
No,
don't
I
know why
totally,
it's so demonized.
yeah. I feel like even in I think we live in such like a patriarchy that's just so all consuming and so normalized that even if you think about how many like objects and like monuments in our society are phallic, like it's just like look at the national monument, or even, sometimes I even think about like microphones. Like I feel like phallocentricity is just so like prominent in our society. Even like casual sexual jokes, like you know, it's just I feel like it's everything
I
is
never
so
heard
phallic.
that before. Put
Oh,
it that way.
oh no, literally, I feel like it's all this like subconscious programming that, of course, everything literally revolves is phallocentric, everything in society. So in terms of that type of sexuality, we're so exposed to it from such a young age, and we're like taught to normalize it. But as soon as something like becomes like centralized, like the female like sexual organ, or even like female sexual pleasure, which like for a
Uh-huh.
while, like honestly, that wasn't even a thing. Like people didn't even think that that was possible or important, you know. So I think now that they're like centralizing this, like kind
What
of like
is
you were
WAP?
saying, exactly, yeah, exactly, you know, kind of like you were saying, Sophia, like I feel like it's so taboo that it's literally something that you're not even supposed to learn about until you're an adult. But then I feel like also in like communities of color, like a lot of times like we grow up in these hyper religious contexts where like it's, you know,
Mhm.
abstinence only, all that, but we also have, like the highest rates of teen pregnancy and like, you know, all these different things. So it's just like you're basically, because everything is so abstinence only, you're taught to suppress all your urges, suppress like everything that you know about sex, not engage, and then you don't have the adequate like infrastructure to engage responsibly. I don't
Right.
know, it's just it's
It's
a
not
mess.
healthy. It's not a healthy cycle. It's
No.
just
Yeah, and I
very
would
toxic.
Yeah, and I think what you're all saying, like to me, and I don't want to make this whole conversation about sex, but it's sad that like there is so much teen pregnancy, and yet like I feel like half of those women haven't had a real orgasm in their life. And I really think like
No, it was tragic.
Oh,
what?
that's so sad.
No, but it's true because of what Afia is saying in the sense that like these girls are going out finding ways to sneak in sex, right? Because they simply can't get like real exploration going, real they need to stay within that box, right, to the public. So now we have women who like have kids and still aren't even sexually mature to a point where they're fulfilled by it. You know,
I feel like it's so interesting because I remember I had a conversation with a friend about how Westernized culture is really built upon guilt and shame. And I think that leads to a lot of suppression. And it leads to, like you said, Sophie, like it leads to people not experiencing pure bliss as you should if you partake in such activity, because, you know, like, why not? Like, that's a part of life. And, you know, even before Megan Thee Stallion, we had Little Kim, we had Foxy Brown. Like, these aren't this, and this is the crazy thing. These aren't this, what she's saying is not revolutionary. And also, male rappers stay talking about WAP and how much they want it and thirst for it. So, and they thirst for women that act like her, look like her, you know, exude this energy, yet you still want to attack these people because you want to be the one to say it. You don't want them to dominate the things that you think that are possessed by you, or this delusion that it is possessed by you. It's misogyny, it's fragile masculinity, it's just so many things, and they all need therapists, they all need help at the end of the day. The ones that think that they can own a woman and what they can say or do at certain times and places, but you know, it's pitiful and sad how it does lead to a lot of, you know, suppression on the women's part. Like, I think that it does take men inside this industry to really just buck up and really take a stand when women are not being treated or given the freedom that men have always been given in this industry.
Speaking of men, an abusive man and dominant man, and we're moving on to Sweetie now. If you don't remember, she was subject to abuse at the hands of a Mr. Quavo from the Migos. And he tried to take it a step further by repossessing her Bentley that he bought her. And so Sweetie was then forced to stunt on everybody with her new car on Instagram.
I mean, I think like in music as a whole, I feel like abuse of women is just so normalized. Like, I feel like music is like a primary, I would argue like music is like a key factor that perpetuates like normalizing like the abuse and subjugation of women, you know, like, and it happens in every genre too. Like, a lot of people go after like rap and R&B, but some country songs, I mean, even like, you know, put women in a compromising position as well, you know. Like, there's a lot of music. I feel like music is like a very like potent cultural force and like a really like teaching moment for a lot of people, even like since their youth, and teaching women that like we are to be enjoyed, we are to be received, we are on the receiving end of whether it be good things or bad things, whether we're getting gifts or like literally getting like abuse. It's like we are these objects that don't have agency. So I feel like that type of whole like sentiment within like the hip hop and R&B community enabled this to like really happen and enabled people to be like, oh, that wasn't abuse, when she's literally getting like put in the elevator on the floor crying. Like, how is that not abuse?
They were going for the Quavo perspective. Like, what happened to him to make him want to do this sort of thing?
It really doesn't matter. And the thing is, like, when you look at like the shade room comments on Instagram and you hear these, when you see these things that people say like, oh, like she threw the first punch, or like, oh, I mean, like she was an abuser too. It's just like, she was the one that was thrown on the floor. Like, at the end of the day, like, that's the result. I'm not going to say that men do not get abused by their counterparts, whether it's a man, woman, whatever their part, you know, whoever their partner is. But at the same time, at that situation, it may be hard and difficult, but you should try to de-escalate the situation and not cause more harm, physical harm, to your partner. I think that he had complete capability of de-escalating the situation and not throwing her on the floor, and fighting to get what was ever in that orange suitcase. It was just unnecessary. You know what I mean? And just like the whole,
didn't have to get to that point.
It didn't really have to get to that point. And then it's just like the whole like trying to repossess like her car. It's like, girl, she's been fine. Like, she had money before you. Like, I also just think like a lot of guys like that, like, they run on the mentality of like, I have money so I can get girls nice things, and like that is my self-actualized self. Like, that is the best that any man can be. Everyone is looking up to me. And they just think that they're this father figure to all these men that want the money, the cars, the girls, and things like that. But it's like, you're just a cheater. Like at the end of the day, you're just a cheater with a lot of money that is somewhat decent looking. You're not as ugly as the other rappers out there, I guess. But it's like that's not even saying a lot. You know what I
feel like
mean?
that's a broke mindset too.
It
Like
really is a broke mindset. And you're out here gaslighting this
get
girl
back.
on Twitter. It's just like it's foolishness. It's complete foolishness. Like you're just a copy carbon version of Future. You're just the like we've seen this type of personality before, and it's just pitiful and it's trifling. And I liked the point that was made. I forgot who made it, but it's just like how it's so centered around like hip hop culture, and I think it's because there's that whole
I feel
I feel like that was a really good point of just how like there's so much abuse always being seen through these like iconic couples or iconic musical duos, and there's always that rhetoric within like right now the hip hop like trap music culture of being a ride or die, and that you have to prove your loyalty by going through so much pain and trauma. And it's kind of like I do have mixed feelings on like having relationship goals or like couple goals, because I did think that Quavo and Sweetie were cute, but I knew that something wasn't perfect because it never really is, you know. And it's unfortunate that she did have to go through a lot of abuse that we didn't even see outside of the video. But it's like when we do, I feel like there's always like a sense of like these music artists having to capitalize off of who they end up with, and it kind of makes them feel like they have to keep in that relationship. And I feel like there's always a lot of commotion and back and forth when it comes to like what should we ride for? Should we ride for the toxic relationships that still bring us joy and entertainment, or should we actually fight for emotional healing and things that really sustain a person through life?
Not to veer this whole conversation off, but everything you're saying, right, Charlotte, it's reminding me of Sierra. And it's reminding me of the fact that Future is way more famous than Sierra now, simply because he just like took away her identity.
Yeah.
And I think I'm personally also concerned about like what is being taught to those women, right? Like what caused Sierra to be so okay. I'm very overly simplifying this, but something caused Sierra to say, okay, fuck it. You know what? I don't care for my own career. I'm gonna let this man outshadow me, and now he's gonna cheat and just let go of my career altogether. So I think stuff like that, I'm very curious to know who can influence these women and why such powerful women are letting random people come in and take their clout, right? When I say letting, I'm using that term loosely because I don't have a better word.
Yeah, I feel like it definitely goes through like abuse and manipulation. I feel like a lot of manipulation comes into play, and I feel like when a person is perceived as like this like uber feminine like presence and energy, they're always put in that box of giving harsh people the benefit of the doubt a lot of times, and they always are the ones that fall on their back. They're always the one that gets the short end of the stick because they're already perceived through the media as like this loving, caring, soft, fairy-like person. So why would they deter from that? Like, why would they? Because that would jeopardize their brand, their image, they've always held on to their musical persona, identity, so on and so forth. So I think Sophia, like I definitely agree with you and understand on that, to where it's just like it wasn't necessarily like letting it all happen, but I feel like it is very real to lose yourself within someone else. And I think and I don't think any celebrity would really want to talk about that openly, which is why we keep seeing the same cycles and patterns.
And I feel like, I don't know if I'm maybe oversimplifying it, but I just feel like one way to overcome these toxic cycles is just to have and promote more of, I always say this, more female and openly gay rappers in the industry, or openly gay and female artists. You know what I mean? Just to counteract that heteronormativity, that toxic masculinity in the industry, in the world.
Do you not feel like right now, for example, like Nas X, he was on his own. Like when he was like, hey, I'm gay and I'm really open about it, I think he lost half of the rappers in the industry immediately.
I feel like he's just aligning himself.
Yeah.
He's what?
Yeah.
He's what?
Aligning himself.
Yeah, but you see, I think even the courageous people who do want to come out and do want to be openly gay or do want to be like, just kind of out there with their identity, they're not being accepted and they're not being welcomed. And
Mm.
so today, Nas X, one could say he could have had a better career had he not mentioned that he's gay, right?
Yeah.
I'm afraid for them almost sometimes because of that.
Yeah.
I feel like people don't realize how much of like an important cultural force like the LGBT community is, like on literally all fronts. Like literally, even from like the makeup scene and how like contouring that even homophobic people like use contouring and that developed from like the trans community, or even like how a lot of times like women like wearing pants, a lot of those like the people who like were perpetuating those things like were defying like social norms and like forefronting their sexuality to the detriment of their social status. Or even like how like the way like this like third gender like kind of operates and how people are like being allowed to like women are allowed to express like masculine desires, or like men are allowed to express feminine desires. Like obviously we're not there completely, but because of like the heavy work that the LGBT community has been putting in for centuries, like straight people enjoy the benefits of that, so I don't, just random, but I've been thinking a lot about how like the LGBT community, like even like homophobic people enjoy the things that LGBTQ people have done, so yeah.
Well, on that note, we're closing out the meeting with Pablo Vittar. Just to be safe, I'm gonna use the pronouns they, because I've heard them use both. So, but according to a Billboard interview from 2017, one of their singles passed 1 million streams on Spotify, which is a pretty good feat. And then that caught the attention of Diplo and Major Lazer and Anita for one of their songs, Sua Cara. Sophia, correct me if I'm saying that wrong.
I'm sorry. Anita was right. Who else did you mention?
Diplo and Major Lazer on Sua Cara, that song.
Yep.
Okay. And it became the second most played from their project, only behind Camila Cabello, Travis Scott, and Quavo's song "No No Better." And Pablo Vittar also debuted with Whitney Houston's "I Have Nothing." And one of their quotes that they frequently talk about is just seeing the importance of having a drag queen on the most played chart so that others can feel represented. So I personally love Pablo Vittar just because they are open, they are queer, they are more feminine, and I just love the music. But I just thought it was interesting how coming from Brazil, they were so like successful, on YouTube, just like and especially in the US. Like they've been on like so many like different like YouTube commercials or like YouTube channels, and just really growing a following, even though they are a man biologically, but still confuse people.
Yeah,
So.
I also think sadly part of why Pablo is very successful is they chose to not be in Brazil. And I think that's sad. Like, so his record label, kind of like Anita too. I don't know if you all know, Anita and Ludmilla are openly gay, so they're bi. And so I think sadly they had to come to America. They're all three of them are in, American record labels. They all kind of came here eating a little bit of shit, even though they should have been huge in Brazil. And now they're huge all over the world. So it's yeah, part of me is like, yeah, F you guys. Part of it is also like, why can't third world countries allow these people to flourish and grow and be the amazing humans that they are, the way they come?
Yeah, definitely.
I wonder why.
I feel like the liberation of like, women, or just like the elimination of like sexism, like a lot of times like the queer community and like the liberation, like queer liberation, like really exemplifies like a lot of like what the roadblocks are with like liberating like everyone kind of sexually and politically, because I think that like the like especially like the trans or like the drag queen or just like this kind of gender fluid like dynamic just literally like undermines all of that like patriarchal, like all of that like gender binary like societal like structure, and it introduces this element of like agency within people that I think that for people is like frightening, of not having this there are only two genders, and when there's a binary, exactly, yeah, and when there's a without the binary there can't be male supremacy, you know. So I feel like there's a lot of that threatening the patriarchy.
Right. Because
And
the
I feel
human
like with
experience
more,
isn't black and white.
yeah, no, and I feel like it's okay for a person to express like how fluid they want to be with their gender, because I feel like that provides more perspective, more art, just things that many very stuck in the box people wouldn't even fathom to imagine or experience. So I think this point was made before, but it's like, you know, like they give like the queer community gives culture, like it gives you things that like you can actually appreciate without having to go through the trials and tribulations that they had to go through for them to get on a platform and build it for themselves and other people to elevate how they felt like they could never express themselves as openly before. So yeah.
Aisha, did you want to add anything or ask anything?
You know, you guys are talking about some great artists, and I think my age shows because I peeked up when you said Whitney Houston, because that's the one that's my generation. So I said, okay. I will say that I happen to be in the I'm just in education, so I'm not in the music industry, but my general thoughts about it is that I always wonder about how many people and artists or women, men, whomever are, you know, affected by harassment and abuse, and they just are put their head down in a way, metaphorically, and just deal with it just for the sake of, you know, trying to still either make it in their chosen career and see how far they can go. So like for me in the music industry, this wasn't a topic that was talked about, obviously, like in the 90s and, you know, when I was of that age. And it always kind of leaves me wondering how many people, especially female artists, or those who are gay or transgender, who just didn't talk about it because it just wasn't that way. It was far more popular to be misogynistic. Yeah, it was far more popular to just be misogynistic and just have like this big male masculine ego, but not necessarily to actually talk about the hard stuff. And so, you know, for our folks, like mine was like, you know, Michelle A came out and said, you know, I was abused by, you know, Dr. Dre and all this other stuff. That's when people were like, really? But then there's a way that, you know, people still, I think even people do it now where they're like, well, what did she do to deserve that? You know, she must have deserved it in some kind of way. And it's really sad because I feel like that you would think that in 2021 things would start to shift, but I just feel like that we are going back to, you know, for lack of better terms, the caveman era. In a lot of ways, we're turning back the clock. I think social media plays a part in that too, because people just release whatever thought is in their mind without actually thinking about it and without care of where their words land and how people hear it. And I also think that people just don't take enough time to educate themselves and really seek the truth. And they just, whatever their experience is, that's fact. And, you know, that's like how people just kind of deal with it in the world. It's really sad. And when you have like, you know, like the Trump administration and people like that, that just make it more public that sort of behavior is okay, it just makes everything so much worse.
What you're saying is resonating to me, Aisha, because of Kesha too.
Oh yeah, Kesha.
And I think sadly when she came out, she had to talk about, right? Like she couldn't come out without talking about being raped. Like I feel like there wasn't even a choice for her. And yeah, even I found myself criticizing her a little bit, you know. Like obviously if you make music like talking about waking up drunk like P. Diddy, maybe we shouldn't take you seriously. So I found myself even doing that, all to remember she's still a human being, you know.
Right.
And I feel like yes, once it happens, it's almost like they can't come back. and I hate that for them.
So hopefully through this little meeting that we had, this little session, we were able to kind of counteract those toxic traits in our society. Well, thank you all for coming today. I know it was kind of last minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I've been
really
asking
love this.
people.
I really, really love this.
Thank you. I'll get to talking to you about more events in the future with Aisha.